One of our favorite times of the year when people are criticizing the Big Ten in football, and we get to talk about how good the Big Ten is in basketball. As we get ready for the start of Big Ten basketball season, Doug Maurice, along with Bill Landis and Ari Wasserman, here outside the Schottenstein Center. Ari, some really good players in this conference again. D'Angelo Russell, the Ohio State freshman, is a guy that a lot of people are talking about, but there's some veterans in this league too. Who are some of the guys you're most excited to see in the Big Ten this year?
I think Frank Kaminsky is the best player in the conference. And I think that's fair to say, and if we're going to start with the best players, that's the reasonable place to start. Since he dropped 43 points last year, I don't think people realized that he was going to be that good going into last year. And then he scored that big game, and then all of a sudden the guy was unstoppable. So I like the way he plays the game. He should be the best player on the best team, on a team that a lot of people are considering to be a national championship team. So if you want to talk best Big Ten players, you have to start there.
Sam Dekker is a guy that came in more heralded at Wisconsin than Kaminsky. Maybe hasn't been quite at that level yet. People think there's a lot of potential for him there. They have some really good guys there. Is there anybody else at Wisconsin, Bill, that you are curious about, or who are some guys you're looking at?
I think it is Dekker. I mean, you just touched on him. But what intrigues me about Dekker is I know he's kind of, I don't want to say underperformed, but been overshadowed by Kaminsky there. And this summer, people were all over Dekker. I mean, he performed really well at the LeBron James camp in Vegas. I think they said he's grown like 2 or 3 inches. He's packed on some muscle. So I'm curious to see with the physical transformation what that does for him on the floor, and if him and Kaminsky can turn into what some people are saying might be the best 1-2 punch in the nation. I
mean, Dekker's maybe a lottery pick type talent, isn't he?
Yeah, I think so. He just, especially now with the added size, I think people are just kind of waiting to see that wow factor. I think he's been solid, and he's been solid to very good, but not a superstar yet.
It's funny to think, as good as Wisconsin is, Ari, and you mentioned this, and as much as people expect big things from them, I think there's a chance, like if Dekker does that, they could maybe even be better than what people might think.
Well, we talked about this in last year's preview videos, and we've written about it. I think that when you look at teams that take the step forward from being good to great, they have 2 NBA-type talents on their roster. And I think that's really what it takes to, I'm not saying you can't compete and you can't win a conference and you can't even make it to the Sweet 16, but I think to get to that point where you're in the national championship conversation, to have Kaminsky and then what Bill was saying about Dekker is a 1-2 punch, and I think the team around him is pretty veteran. I think that Wisconsin could give the Big Ten a chance to win their first national championship since 2000.
Michigan has been a team that has had 2 unbelievable years. They lost Trey Burke and Tim Hardaway the first time. They had a great year. Then last year they had Mitch McGary and Glenn Robinson, the third back. McGary was hurt. They had another great year. Now both those guys are gone, and we're kind of down to Karis LeVert as the guy who's left. They obviously have some other really good players. Derek Walton's a guy that people think is going to be really good at point guard. You like Karis LeVert. I like Karis LeVert. He's an Ohio kid. Was under-recruited. What kind of year? I mean, again, this is a guy who's kind of come from off the radar and now looks like a first-round draft pick.
He's just the next guy that Ohio State is going to have to answer for, I guess. Why don't you recruit him? Or why don't you get him? I really fell in love with him in the Big Ten tournament last year. You get a sense of how that guy plays when you're sitting courtside, and there were times where he made a move, dribbled around somebody, laid it in, times where he took a step back and knocked down shots. He's flexible. I think he's long. He's very athletic. He's confident. I really think that by the time this year's over with, he's going to definitely be considered a top 5 player and a reason why Michigan should be a team to watch.
It's going to be an interesting battle for Big Ten Player of the Year. The 2 Wisconsin guys, Karis LeVert, D'Angelo Russell could be in that mix. I want to talk about a guy that I've always liked, Brandon Dawson at Michigan State. It's a little bit of a transformation at Michigan State. Talking about losing people, Adrian Payne, Gary Harris gone from that team. Brandon Harris was a guy who was a 5-star recruit. Now he's a senior. He's had injuries. He's been a little inconsistent. This is sort of his team now, but he's a freak, man. Like he always, to me, and I love to compare everybody to David Lighty. He's one of my favorite players I've covered here. Brandon Dawson is like David Lighty plus. Like he's big and thick and athletic, but he's even like that notch ahead, I think, of Lighty just in raw athleticism. I think there's a chance he makes a huge jump this year. I think Michigan State maybe is not going to be as good as they were in the past, not as deep with talent, but I think Brandon Dawson has a chance to play himself into a first-round kind of guy because he has that natural talent. And there's another guy is in the same boat in a lot of ways. A.J. Hammonds is a 7-footer at Purdue, another 5-star guy who's been good, not great. He's averaged like 10 points a game. Matt Painter, I've always thought is a really good coach. He's not been good lately. Purdue made 6 straight tournaments. They missed the tournament both of the last 2 years. They finished last in this conference last year by themselves, behind Northwestern, behind Penn State. Purdue was last. Purdue should not be last. They have some new pieces there. A.J. Hammonds very well may hold Matt Painter's future in his hands. I think if A.J. Hammonds is a first-team All-Big Ten kind of player, I think Purdue has a chance to surprise and maybe be a tournament team. And if not, I think Matt Painter might be out of there. Is there anybody else, Bill, that's maybe a surprise guy for you?
I don't know if he's a surprise guy, but he's going to be pretty good this year. It's Aaron White at Iowa. And Fran McCafferty said at Big Ten Media Day that this is Aaron White's team. And I sat down with Aaron for about 5 minutes in Chicago, and he's ready to take it on. I mean, Fran said he's ready. Aaron said he's ready. And I know you've written about him, and it's kind of been written out there a lot that he was an under-recruited guy and plays with a chip on his shoulder. And he's kind of transformed into a guy who, again, can I mean, he said himself he was surprised that he's at the level now where he's considered an NBA talent. And I think he's going to take another step this year.
Our guy.
Northeast
Ohio, that's our guy.
Yeah.
Sports Illustrated projected 8 Big Ten teams to make the NCAA tournament. This is going to be an interesting conference, not just at the top, where I think we believe Wisconsin is there, and then teams like Ohio State are in that mix. It's going to be a fight in the middle. Teams like Iowa, Illinois, Minnesota, Maryland. Remember, we have 14 basketball teams in this conference now, too. It's going to be a year where you know, it's one of those things. Every year we talk about, the Big Ten's better this year. There's going to be, I think, again, a lot of times you don't get to take a night off because the 9th best team in the Big Ten is going to be pretty good. So who's your 9th? No, we're not going to talk about 9th. Who is your winner, and where do you think Ohio State fits in here?
Wisconsin's my winner. I really went on a limb. I live dangerously. I think Ohio State, I participated in the preseason media poll, and I put Ohio State 3. It's been 3 weeks, so I think it's been long enough, or even a month, or maybe even longer. Time flies during football season. So I think I can change my mind now, and I think I'm going to put Ohio State 2. I had them 3 behind Michigan State at first, but I kind of like the way that Ohio State's roster is shaping up, and I think when I initially voted for that poll that I thought D'Angelo Russell was not as good as what maybe a lot of people are anticipating. So keeping that in mind, I'm going to move them up to 2.
I'm going Wisconsin 1, Ohio State 2, Michigan State 3. I think it's an interesting conference, again, because Michigan State and Michigan lost so much talent. We're not exactly sure how they're going to replace it. Bill, who do you got?
I have Wisconsin 1 for consistency's sake. Ohio State 2 as well. I think Ohio State can transform into one of the better teams in this conference. I don't think they might not look like that at the start, but I think come March, I think you'll be looking at this team, and D'Angelo Russell in particular is a team that can compete for the Big Ten title. We'll find out the last game of the season when Ohio State and Wisconsin play here. And the number 3, I have Nebraska. I think Nebraska has been steadily improving under Tim Miles. They have Terrence Petaway, who's a guy we didn't talk about, as one of the better players in the conference. And I think Tim Miles, when he was at Media Day, he's like a charismatic guy. I think he gets a lot out of his team, and I think this is the year where it kind of clicks for them and they go to number 3.
I'm intrigued about Nebraska. They're always those teams that come from off the radar and come out of nowhere, don't have a great tradition in a sport, and then all of a sudden they're good. And then all of a sudden people expect them to be good, and then it's harder to be good. I think Tim Miles is a good coach. I'll be curious to see if they can get to that next level with Nebraska. Big Ten basketball all year long. It's going to be a really good conference to cover as usual. All 3 of us will be doing that. Follow along all season. For now, Bill Landis, Ari Wasserman, I'm Doug Maurice. Thanks for watching here at cleveland.com.